Hi everyone. Today is the second video on Blazor WebAssembly standalone app authentication with Google. Okay. In the first video, we have created a sample Blazor web application and we registered directly the web application with the Google Console app where we need to register our domain. Then we have also integrated some basic configuration, and also we have checked that our app is successfully authenticated with the Google account. Okay, now in this continuation video, what we will do, once the user is login into our Blazor WebAssembly application, we need to register that user, right? Because the user might not be available in our application database. So whenever the user is authenticated, or suppose if he is a new user, we must register them or save the information about the user in our database. Okay, and also we are going to generate a custom Jwt token as well. Why? Because now to save the user information, we definitely need to have a API. So that API will be source for our application, like fetching the data, displaying the data. So we need to we might have some authenticated services in that API. So using the Google token ID, we cannot validate against our API, right? So for that purpose, what we will do, we will create a custom JWT token so that that token will be stored in our application memory. So whenever any secure request that we are going to invoke or our API, then we will going to add our JWT token as a authorization head. So these are the main targets. One is registering the Google user. Another thing is getting the JWT access token to consume the secured endpoints from the API. Okay, so let's jump into our sample application. Okay, one thing before going to sample, I have already made entire this session. What I'm going to explain already is furnished into this blog. Every information is available in this blog. So if anyone are interested, the link for this blog will be in the description of the video. You can check there. Okay. So this is my blog. Okay. And this is my application up and running. As we know, we are already implemented this one in the part 1 video with some basic Google configurations. So let's check one more time. Uh, Google user login. So I am successfully logged in. So let me log out. Okay, let's jump into our sample. Now our main target is we need to register the Google user into our database, right? So I have already some database structure. Okay, I'm going to show it now. So the database structure I will show from my blog. Okay, so like this, I have already have table like user table and roles table. Okay, while registering user, I am going to give one default role as well. Okay, for better understanding. So what data I can save in this table from the Google token? I can save first name, last name, email. There will not be a password or the refresh token. Okay, so I can only create a new record with the 3 records, right? First name, sorry, first name, last name, and email address. Because only these 3 options are available to me from the Google token ID as a Google claims. So to save them, we must need to have one API. So for that, what I will do now, I will create a .NET 5 Web API. So let's create a another application Okay, Web API application. So this is the command to create my new Web API project. Sorry. So project created successfully. Let me open this project as well. So this is my .NET 5 Web API project. Okay. So first thing is I I need to establish the database communication with my database with my application. For that, what I will do, I am going to use code first approach with existing database. Okay. So to save some time, I have already uh, saved some code snippets. So I am directly copy paste them because I hope everyone knows very well about the code first with existing database. Okay. So let's create a folder like data. Inside one more folder, entities. Okay. I have two tables, right? User and roles. So let's create first users entity that represent user table. So this is my user class. Let's create another class that is user roles. So this is my user roles class. Okay. Now let's create data context. Okay. This is my data context class. Now we have to install two NuGet packages like NT Framework Core and SQL extension for NT Framework Core. So let's install them. Okay, it is installed. Next is SQL extension for NT Framework Core. So you can check the link is available here. Microsoft NT Framework Core.SQL Server. Okay, so both the packages successfully installed. Now import those NT Framework Core namespaces. Okay. Now let's configure the connection string in the app settings.development.json file. So this is my connection string. Okay, my local DB database connection string. Now let's configure the our DB context in the uh, startup file. So like this, we have to configure our database context in the startup file. Okay. Now uh, let's create a endpoint for the user registration. Okay. So first let's begin with a request object. Okay, we will have a request object that contains data like user first name, last name, and email address. Okay, let's create a model for that. So we will name like, so this is class for my input payload. Okay, so these are the payload data that need to be sent from our Blazor application. Okay, now let's create a new controller class where we are going to create our registration endpoint. So in controllers, let's create a new controller like account controller. So, so this is our account controller. Okay. Now let's create an action method for our Google user registration. Okay. Our payload is request model. Okay. So once I have created user, I want to return response is nothing but custom Jwt token so that our Blazor WebAssembly store that Jwt token and uses it as a authorization header when it try to consume other secured endpoints in this API. Okay, so for that, let me create a response model as well. Okay, now I can say return okay, but let's create response model as well. So my payload object will have only single property like okay. Okay, this is my response object. Now let's create our business logic files where we have to implement our core logic. So let me create a folder like logics. Okay, first let's create a interface. Okay, okay, now we need to define our core method definition here. Okay, so let me uh, register like task Okay. And final output of my core logic will be token response model. So let me use that. Okay. And my method definition name is Google user register. Okay, and its payload, we know the request payload. So I will use same. Okay. Let's import the namespaces. Okay. Now we have to import the we have to create the account logics that going to inherit this interface. So this is my account logic class and it is expecting to inherit the I account logic. So let's implement the method inside of it. Okay. Let's first inject our context into the constructor of our account logic. So the context injected successfully. Now first thing we have to do is first we need to check whether the user is already exist in our database. Okay, without checking if we insert directly, there there are high chances of inserting duplicate records for the same user. Okay, so first let's test our user is that Blazor application send user already exist in our database or not. So for that, okay, and now let's create uh, one variable to check the user roles collection. Okay, like okay, let's declare a variable like this. Now let's check that user variable is empty or not. If user equal to null means the current requested user is not exist in our database means user is new user. Then we have to uh, restore the record into our database. For that, let me create a one private method. Void create user. Okay. So let it be the first parameter. Okay. Second parameter will be user object. Okay. Third parameter will be all user roles. Okay. Okay. Let's consume this method from here so that we can understand what are the input parameters. So here Google model user I will pass and all user roles. Okay. This will be asynchronous. Okay. And we can await it. Now let's implement logic to create the user. So first let's prepare user model. Okay. Email address, first name, last name. Okay. Now let's save this object. Okay. So let's await it. Now once user is successfully created, I want to add one default uh, user role, something like admin. Okay. So default role equal to new user roles. Okay. Role of the name like admin and the user ID equal to I can get it from user dot ID. Okay. Let's save this as well. So let's await it. And finally, add that default user role to all user roles. Okay. The reason I am taking roles as well because I am going to use those roles inside of the Jwt token generation. Okay. So here you can see our private method for creating user. What we are doing, we are creating the user and saving to the database. Next, after user is successfully saved, we are adding one default role like admin. Okay, and also saving that role and adding to the collection the recently added role. Now we need to for the existing user we need to get all the roles. So for that we will check like all user roles dot count equal to 0 means that is existing user only. User is existing database. We need to fetch the roles from the database for that user. For suppose if it is non-existing user, then it will create and it will get default role to this variable. So this variable here passing right by reference. So it will get count greater than 0. Then this logic won't execute for new users. Okay. All user roles equal to auth context dot user roles dot to list async. Let's await it here. Okay. Now I have successfully registered the user data and also I have getting the user roles from the data. Now the pending work is now I need to generate the JWT auth token and it should be written as a response. Okay. So for that I have already have a code snippet. Okay. To save some time. Okay. The JWT token implementation. If you want in-depth details, I have already created a custom JWT token creation for authentication in .NET Web API in my blogs. You can check over there. First thing is for configuring JWT token, we must have uh, few settings that we need to store them in the app settings.json. Okay, so these are the token settings for generating our JWT access token. Okay, now let me explain briefly. Issuer means it will add like a ISS claim in our JWT token. So this value should be domain of the issuer of the API, nothing but our API domain. Okay. So here I have registered 6001, right? By default, any .NET application runs under 5001. So let's change that configuration as well now, like 6001. So for that, go to properties folder and JSON config in the bottom. Here you can change it to 6 for HTTP and non-HTTP as well. Okay, because 5000 is already going to use by our client Blazor Blazor WebAssembly application. So I am changing my API port to 6000. So it will run under 6001 for HTTPS and 6000 for non-HTTPS. Okay, and audience nothing but uh, the requested client. Here in our application, the requested client is nothing but our Blazor WebAssembly application. So it is also add like a AUD claim in the JWT token, and its value should be a domain. So our domain of our Blazor WebAssembly is 5001. Okay. So here key, any random key, you can paste it here, and it should be around 32 bytes is good for uh, creating the JWT token. So here I have given the some string, but in real-time application, you can generate some random key and paste it over here, that too of 32 bytes. Okay. Now we have to create a class for these token settings to load them into our application. So let's create new folder like shared. Okay. So let's create name with this class. So yes. So this is our token settings class look like. Okay. So issuer, audio, and key. Now we need to register this token setting class in the startup to load the values from the JSON file. So like this, we need to register. We have to define here type, and here we need to define the parent property in the settings. So nothing but token setting. This property should be matched here. Okay. So let's import namespace. Now let's inject these token settings into our uh, account logic class. Okay, like this we need to assign our token settings. Now we have to create a private class that going to generate us JWT token. Okay, so let me copy paste my snippet. Okay, I have pasted my JWT token. So this method will have input parameter with a list of rows. Okay, so if you observe here, first line of code, we are generating symmetry security token instance. So this instance, if you hover here or go peek for definition, okay, and scroll up. So it loads from Microsoft dot, sorry. So symmetric security loads from Microsoft dot identity model dot token. Okay. So like here we need to initialize that instance, and inside of it, it expecting some parameters that is nothing but the byte array of code. So what byte array of code we have to give means we need to pass our key. Key nothing but the random generated key. Okay. This key is passed as a byte array of code through the symmetric security key instance. So using this, it will generate the symmetric security token instance. Okay. Next line of code, if you coming here, signing credentials. Okay. One of the main important part of JWT token is signing credentials. So now if you go to jwt.io, here I want to show how the JWT token is generated. Okay. Okay, if you go to the jwt.io website, you can understand how the JWT token is framed. So it contains mainly three components. One is header. Okay, so header will contains its type. What is its type? Nothing but JWT and algorithm used for this encryption. Okay, and next payload. Payload is nothing but our data, user data like clients, everything will be saved as a payload. Okay, and next is signature. This is the digital signature will be helpful to encryption of the token. So same way, this signing credential will be helpful to generating the token. Nothing but this is the third path where we are seeing this. Okay, so this symmetric instance, if you peek here, it loads from, let's check it, Microsoft Identity Model token. Okay, so this instance expects input parameter like one security key and algorithm. So using the combination, it will generate the signing credentials for us. Okay. In the next step, what we are doing, we are looping our roles of input parameter and adding them as a client. Okay. Next step. Finally, we are preparing the JWT security token instance. Okay. Uh, Here, see, issuer is nothing but this value from the token setting. And audience also we will use here. Audience. Okay, expiration I have given 30 seconds. For this demo, I am giving directly 30 seconds. If you want, for better use, what you can do, you can pass the Google token expiration date as one of the additional parameter into the payload request. So let me show you. Okay. Here you can you will get expiration date as well. So that date, exp date, okay, it will be in some milliseconds. You can say double. So this is nothing but from payload. we have to manually send the Google token expiration to it. So for this demo, I'm skipping that. You can send that as well and assign same expiration date for your Jwt token as well. But for this demo, I am simply taking 30 seconds. Okay. It is very easy. Nothing is there. You need to convert those double that milliseconds into the time, and we need to assign it here. Okay. And then next is signing credentials. We have created just above, right? Signing credentials. And finally, we are adding our user clients to the JWT security token. So let's pick the definition from where this is created. So this is from system.identitymodel.tokens.jwt. Okay. And finally, using JWT security handler, we are using write token method. We are passing our token object. So it finally returns the simple string of data. Okay. Now what we will do here, I will return my token response model. Okay. So what it is should be initialized. It's an object, right? And it is having one property, JWT token API, right? And let's get JWT auth token and all use. That's it. So let's have a one more peek into our code. So what we are doing here, this is our core method. Okay, here first what we are doing, we are checking the user exists or not. If user not exist, then we created a private method to create the new user with the default role. Once the roles are created, okay, what we are doing, we are invoking the get token access by passing the all the roles. So here we are generating token with all the required configuration. Okay, so that's it. Now what we have to do, we need to inject this account logics into my controller. Before doing that, we need to register it, this I account logic and account logic in the startup file. So let's register them. Okay, now we can inject them here. So let's inject that I account logic interface here. Finally, return the response. And here await it. Okay, that's all about our endpoint for user registration and returning the response. Okay, now API is ready. Now we should consume it into our application, right? Okay, so let's jump back to our Blazor WebAssembly application. So to consume the API in Blazor WebAssembly application, we need to use the HTTP client. So there are 4 different techniques for invoking the HTTP client for consuming the external API. In that, here I am going to use the typed client technique. Typed client technique is nothing but if your client application has multiple number of different domain APIs. Okay, each domain API calls all will be written in one class. Suppose I have example.com.api is one API and example2.com.api is another API. Okay, I will create all the related logic in separate classes like example1.cs file and example2.cs file. So these two, each class is called as typed client. Means each domain it will have its own specific class, and inside of that class it will contain all its implementation. So I'm going to use that typed client technique. Okay, first let's create a folder like API call. Okay. Yeah, path, right. Okay. So this is my typed client class. First thing is I need to inject the HTTP client uh, into my typed client class. Okay. Now let's create a method that will invoke the register API client. Okay. Now we need to create here also request response models that are as it is same we have created in our API project. Okay, so let's duplicate them into my Blazor WebAssembly application as well. So copy paste everything. Models create CS. So copy paste here as it is same class. Okay, similarly, let's create response model as well. So this is our token response model class. Okay, now we are good to create our API invocation class. So let's first serialize our post data. Okay, we are simply serializing our data into the string content. Now let's invoke the endpoint. Let's use post async method. First we need to pass the parameter. Next will be our HTTP content, that is nothing but this serialized post content. Okay, so here I need to trim the path. So for that, let's go to our API. So it will take account. So paste it here, and next thing is we haven't defined a route for here. Route user register. Okay, and it should be HTTP port. I missed to implement these things, so make sure to have them. Okay, so now copy the remaining path and go to our WebAssembly project and paste it here. Here we haven't giving our domain, right? So API domain will be registered in the program.cs file, which we will do in upcoming steps. Okay, now response dot should await it. Response dot insert status code 200, that means it is successful. Then I am going to return my data, that is response dot content dot read from JSON async. This is an extension for system.text system.net.http.json. Its flexibility is automatically deserializes the response data. So token response mode. So it is async, we need to await it. So that's it, our class to invoke. So what we are doing, we're serializing our payload data and invoking the post call and returning the response data, right? Now let's register this namespace in input file so that we can easily use this data. Okay. Now what we have to do? We need to register and we will get the token data. Now this token data will be saved into my user claims. Basically, once we registered with Google account, our user claims will be automatically created by our application. Okay, it is non-editable claims. So to inject our Jwt token as one of the claim, we need to override. We need to implement thing like accounts clients principal factory, where we have flexibility to override those claims. There only we are going to invoke our API as well. Okay. So I forgot one more thing. We need to register this typed client in program.cs. Let's do that first. Yeah, path client in startup. To do that, I need one more extension library .http NuGet. So first let's install it. Before installing NuGet, I have rectify one thing. I should use overloaded constructor like. Okay, we need to specify the encoding like UTF-8 and application.json while generating the string content instance as well. Okay, so please correct it. And now let's install that NuGet. Package is installed successfully. Now let's jump into our program.cs file. We have to register here. Builder.services.add HTTP client, and I need to specify the name of my typed client class, that is auth client. Okay. Options. I can specify option dot base address equal to new URL, and I know my API. So let me copy. You can understand. So I have just changed it, right. What is my domain? HTTP domain, that is 6001. So let's copy that and come over here and paste it here. So from here, domain will be automatically accessed by the HTTP client on injecting, because this client will contain all the configuration that we registered in startup. Okay, that is totally taken care by the framework. And I have mentioned, right, we need to implement like account lines factory class where we are going to invoking the API, and we will add the response token as a client to the logged in user. So for that, what I will do, I will create a folder like provider. Okay, now we are implementing one provider. Okay, provider, providers, and here let's create our class to implement it. So let me name my provider like custom account factory. Let's see. Now we need to implement account clients principal factory. See, this is from Microsoft.component.webassembly.authentication library. It is loading. So here we will override the clients. So here specify like remote user account. Okay. So that is also loads from the WebAssembly authentication library. Now let's constructor. Okay. I access token provider access. Okay. So this is from authentication.internal. Okay, I can say like accessor. Now we need to pass it to the base constructor. Okay, so that's it. Now here we need to inject our app authentication typed client. So let's inject it. So private read only uh, app auth client app auth client. So here we are just overriding our login claims, and also here only we are going to invoke the registration API. Okay. Now, if this account contains one method, protected overridable method, so let's go to definition and override that method. It is nothing but this one. Okay, so let's public override. Okay, yes, I will do where sure those are equal to. Okay, if initial user dot is, so I haven't awaited, we should await it. Now here we can check is authenticated or not. Is identity dot is authenticated. So if user is logged in, then we need to invoke our API. So for invoking API, we need to prepare payload, right? So we need to prepare the payload for our registration process, that is new. So let me set the request model, that is register model. Okay. So after preparing my registration Google user payload object looks like here. What we are doing, initialize authenticate claims means nothing but the Google claims here we have. So from that Google claims, we are getting email address, given name is nothing but your first name, and family name is nothing but your last name. So how to find these names if you have any doubt? So once login, inspect element and go to application and go to session. Here you can expand the profile. So here, these are all the claim names. Same names can be used here. Okay. If you have any doubt, you can copy paste from there. So here I am preparing the payload data like this. Now I need to invoke my API. Okay. Once I receive payload, I need to add it as a claim. For that, I can use initial and identity. I can typecast it like claim identity, and I can then add claim. So new claim. I can name like JWT API JWT and response dot. Okay, now it is available as a token. Okay, in claims, so I can access it from the claims. Okay, and finally we are returning the initial user. So that's all about the overriding the user claims, and also here we are registering the user to the database. Now I should register this custom account factory to the mm, open OpenID service for the program.cs file. We need to change it. So here we can specify like remote authentication state, okay, and remote user account. We need to specify the authentication state and the user account. This user account, if you recall, here. Okay, and we need to extend it bit more. Add claims factory. The account claims principal factor, nothing but here we have inherit, right? Here we need to register our provider. Okay, here remote authentication state, authentication state, and remote user account, and then our class name. So that's it for the registration. Okay, let's split it down. Okay, so now what will happen whenever we authenticate with the Google account, this remote class will be automatically executed. And also it will be executed on every page load because it is registered as service, right? But we are only execute our logic for the authenticated user. So the only thing is if the tab is user is authenticated and he reloaded the page, then also this code will be executed because we cannot avoid it because I cannot call the JS runtime and store because I am not store. So think like this: if I store it in session store, this token, so I can check right before executing this logic. If already token exists from the browser store, we no need to execute. The problem is I cannot access JS runtime here. It throws error. That is the reason on every page reload for the authenticated user, this logic will be executed. Okay, that is the drawback. But since web Blazor assembly is a single page application, that is okay to ignore. Okay, so okay, I have already had a code snippet for cross origin. So let's add it here. So here I have registered my cross origin policy like core service, and I am allowing any origin, any header, and any method. Okay, and now register that policy under the app routing enable course. Okay, use course. Here we need to pass the name of my course policy. Okay, I think we are good. And one final thing I have missed before testing our application. Uh, our application, if you recall, the first video of this demo, if you recall, we are not getting email uh, as a claim by default. Okay, to get email as a claim for default, we need to register one scope like options dot provider options dot default scope. So here I can specify like email. Sorry, it should be added. Okay, now I can get email as well. I think we are done with everything. Now let's test our application. Please don't forget, without this, the token provided by the Google won't contain email. For our registration, email is mandatory. I should have mentioned it first starting of this video. I forgot it. So let's try to log in. And we have successfully authenticated. Let's check in network calls. See here Google registration call and check for the request payload. See my email account, first name, last name. I am successfully sending. Let's check the response. See, Jwt token is successfully returning from the JS. Means sorry, response. Okay. Now let's check the user is created into the database or not. So if you observe, the second record here is created with the Google. Okay. From this, we can prove that our Google user is successfully registered into the database. And next one final implementation is in our API side, we need to enable the JWT token verification service. Okay, and also we need to create a sample secured endpoint, very simple one, with decorated with authorization header, so that I can consume that API from my Blazor WebAssembly application. So let's first go to our service application and let's install the JWT barrier NuGet. Okay, let's Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Authentication.jwt barrier. Let's install it now in my API project. So by installing this, I will have capability to uh, verify my token, custom token I have created. So you can see here it is successfully installed. Okay, now let's add that service in the startup file for the verification of the JWT token. So to enable the authentication JWT authentication service, we have to do first we need to define the add authentication service and we need to define the schema name. Here schema name nothing but base here. See, this constant only. Okay, to that we need to add the extension add barrier token and here we have configurations. See here this if you observe this line of code we are loading the token settings and what we are doing we are assigning some token validation parameters. Those validations are parameters are nothing but issuer and enable issuer, audience, enable audience and signing key. See the same symmetric signing key. If you recall our path logic, let me go over there. Metric signing account logic, same line of code. See this line of code only here we used. Okay, symmetric key and enabling the validate the issuer signing key. So these are the simple steps. Okay, we need to enable. That's it for enabling the JWT validation service. And one final step is just above the add authorization, we need to enable app.add authentication middleware. Now in the account controller, let's create a some dummy, uh, what I can say, action method. Okay, can name it like cities. Okay, I want to return some fake collection of cities. Okay, Hyderabad, Mumbai. Okay, this is the result from my output, and let's create HTTP get method, and let's define route like cities, and here we need to decorate it authorize attribute. So now this is a secured endpoint. So to consume this secured endpoint, what we have to need, we must have a validation, sorry, JWT token in the request header as a authorization. Now we are done with the API side. Now let's jump into our Blazor WebAssembly side. So in the Blazor WebAssembly side, what we will do, go to our index.razorpy, okay, not index.html, control P, index.razor page, index.razor page, dot. So what I will do, I will delete these dummy data and let's write some code like let's use authorize component, default component, authorize view component. Okay, this will only be visible for authorized data. Okay, li, sorry, I want to display the cities here. Okay, UI. So for that, at the rate code. Okay, and here protected override initialized async. Okay, so let remove this unwanted data added here. Override async task. Okay, let's format it. So here I want to call that secured endpoint. Okay, for that what I can do, I need to inject at the rate inject decorator. I can use a path client. A path client. That's I have injected. Now I will have a private variable for a list of cities. So list of strings, that is cities. Okay, new cities. Oh, list of cities. Okay. Here I need to invoke the API, but I haven't created the new secured API logic. So for that, let's go to auth API client class. Okay, and here I can say like public async task, and output is list of strings. Okay, and get cities. Okay, so this will have some improved property, nothing but our token. We need to pass token here. Okay, how we will pass, I will mention in upcoming steps. Okay, HTTP client dot default request headers dot authorization equal to new authorization header value. So let's import the namespace bearer comma token. Okay, so we are adding our token as a authorization header value. Now I can simply return HTTP client get from JSON async. Expected output is list of strings, right? So I need to specify the path. So accounts slash cities, I believe. Okay, let's check from here. Path cities. Okay, that's fine. And it should be available, right? Okay. Now method is ready. Now, if you go to index.razor page, I want to invoke only when user is authenticated, right? So for the to get the authentication state of the user, I can use cascading parameter private ask authentication state property. Okay, authentication state. I can use this property to get the user authenticated or not. So where auth state equal to authentication state dot result, that will give the result if auth state dot user dot identity dot is authenticated. If a user is authenticated, then I want to fetch the data. So city is equal to await authentication dot get cities. Okay, and I need to pass the token. For that, string token equal to okay auth state dot user dot clients where dot type equal to what I have mentioned here, my claim name here, API JWT. Copy that and go to here and paste it here and select value. Okay, first or default. Now it will return my JWT token that I have added in the custom account factory class. Okay, like this we have to use token. And let's bind the data. So for @ for each item cities. Okay, so let's name it like city and bind for allies @city. I think this will work. Let's try to refresh our page and check the output. See, I am able to see the data. If I log out, I won't see the data. If I come home, see empty. Now again, I will re-log in and check here. And it is trying to log in. See, data is coming. And if I reload, we can see the call again. If we go to networks, see, cities API call. And if you can see in authorization header, our token is added automatically. Sorry, it is added. We have did right and response and binding. And if you log out, nothing will work. Everything is empty. Right. So this is how it will work. So what we have did here, we have registered our Google authenticated user into our database, and then we have created a JWT token. That token is added into our Google user claims as a one of the claim. Using that claim, we are authenticating our API secured endpoint. Okay, and there will be one more video that is independent of the first two videos, because there I am going to create the Google authentication in existing project, means the project that is created without authentication, right? So in that project, how to integrate the Google authentication, means in the first video everything is automated by the template. All the steps are in the third video I am going to manually register. So it is an optional one. If you want to check it, you can check that video, or else you can ignore the upcoming third video, because there is nothing special. I am doing the replica of the first video, but from the scratch, means everything manually. So that's it about this video. I think this video has delivered some useful information to you all. If you like my video, please do subscribe to my channel. We will meet you again soon with new videos. Until then, signing off.